Staring at me, Yuri asked, "Why are you looking at me like that?" "Just because you remind me of someone in a girl group." Upon my words, Yuri chuckled softly. "Oh, so you like girl groups, senior?" "Well, not really. Until just before entering the military, I only knew the group names, not the number of members or their hit songs. However, by the time I came out, I could recite the history of girl groups. Not only me but all South Korean soldiers were the same. Would you believe that knowing the hit songs of girl groups from that time can tell you the year of their military enlistment?" "This is true. Does that mean you find them pretty?" "Does it mean that?" We entered a cafe where a large roasting machine was installed on one side, and various types of coffee beans were available. Contrary to the expected high prices, the cost was not much different from other cafes. "What would you like to drink?" "Oh, I'll pay, senior." "What would you like?" Since she was offering to pay, there was no need for me to pull out my wallet, right? "Americano." "It's cold, how about something hot instead?" "Sure." Yuri ordered 2 of the same drinks. We sat by the window on the second floor with our coffees. Even though she's my junior, sitting face to face alone with a girl feels awkward. It wasn't like this before. It's all because of the military after all. To break the awkwardness, I think I need to say something, but thankfully Yuri spoke first. "Why did you come to Gangnam?" "I came to visit a friend's house for a short while." Yuri nodded at my words. "I see. And what about you?" "I live in Cheongdam-dong." It's easy to think that everyone living in Gangnam is doing well financially, but even within that area, there is a significant gap between neighborhoods. If it's Cheongdam-dong, it belongs to the top tier in Gangnam in terms of wealth. Are you perhaps from a wealthy family? Until high school, I didn't have a concept of which households were well off or not. Since schools were assigned based on proximity, people of similar economic backgrounds were grouped. However, things changed once I entered college. Korea University is a prestigious institution. While most students are from working or middle-class families, some come from more affluent backgrounds. Even if they weren't from well-known conglomerates, there were quite a few students from upper-class families with assets exceeding hundreds of millions or sons of small business owners. While other students worked part-time jobs or worried about student loans, living expenses and tuition fees, these students easily rented expensive studios near the school and drove cars given by their parents. Yuri hesitated as if she had something to say to me. "Why did you want to meet?" Yuri gave an awkward smile at my question. "I wanted to apologize to you about what happened with Suna Sunbae." "Ah." Yuri slightly lowered her head. "I'm sorry. I don't go to department gatherings, so I didn't know. Even if you go out a few times for drinks, it's not like it's anyone's job to figure out who's dating who within the department." Seeing her say this, "Is she an outsider?" I chuckled and replied, "It's okay. It's not something to apologize for if she didn't know. And even if she did know, there's still no need to apologize." Yuri let out a sigh of relief. "Ah, that's a relief. I was worried after you left so abruptly yesterday." Listening to her, it seems like things got messy after Sienna and I left the gathering. Yuri must feel sorry for causing that mess, and that's why she came to meet me. "Planning to return to school next year?" "If nothing special happens, I think I will. Then we'll be taking second-year classes together." We chatted over coffee about various things. Despite not knowing at the gathering, she seems to have a pretty good personality. As our conversation was winding down, Yuri cautiously said to me, "Oh, I have a favor to ask." "What's the favor?" "Well, that is she asking me out after seeing each other so briefly?" Wait, could it be? Was the apology an excuse, and did she call me to confess her feelings? What should I say in response to this? Regardless of liking or disliking her, I've never thought about this kind of situation before. Plus, I'm busy with investments right now. Should I reject the confession? But it's too cute to reject. But I'm not ready emotionally yet. In that brief moment, various thoughts swirled in my head. Trying to keep a casual expression, I waited, and Yuri spoke up. "I'm thinking of changing my phone. Can you come with me? I feel like I might get ripped off if I go alone as a woman." "Oh, really?" I don't know what I was thinking by myself. I should probably start drinking my kimchi soup. I don't know much about phones either. By the way, this is where Taekyu is an expert. He hardly spends money on food and clothing, but he doesn't skimp on buying electronics like phones, TVs, and game consoles. He probably knows all the details about the latest phone models, specs, prices, and so on. Even if you don't know much, it's okay. Just coming with me is helpful. I nodded. Okay. We left the cafe together. Just across the street there was a direct store for SSK Telecom. On the first floor there were phones on display and the service center was on the second floor. As we entered, a staff member in a red uniform approached us with a name tag. How can I assist you today? I want to change my phone. The staff's face brightened at Yuri's words. Do you have a model in mind? Do you have the Samsung Electronics L6? Of course. It's currently the best-selling model. Following the employee's guidance, Yuri took her seat and the consultation began in earnest. Discussions about changing phone numbers, device upgrades, installment payments, subsidies, public support funds, point redemptions, card benefits, and so on filled the air, making it all sound quite incomprehensible. These days, even buying a single phone seems incredibly complicated. I now understand what it means to become a naive customer instead of a wise one, Yuri thought to herself, feeling overwhelmed by the information exchanged. Despite feeling a bit overwhelmed, Yuri listened carefully and asked numerous questions. If you understand so well, why did you ask me to come along? Yuri wondered silently. As Yuri engaged in the consultation, I looked around the store. Positioned prominently was the latest product from Samsung Electronics, the L6. The phone I used before entering the military was the L3, but now they've come up with the L6. Time flies indeed. For reference, the phone I currently use is the budget model J2 from Samsung Electronics. I picked up the L6 and examined it closely. It was noticeably thinner and had a sleek design, probably due to being the latest model. However, at that moment something seemed to flicker in front of my eyes, almost like a hologram. Could it be? What does this mean? Why are you staring like that, senior? Is something there? Yuri asked, noticing my distraction with a puzzled look. The hologram had disappeared as quickly as it appeared. I shrugged it off. It's nothing. Just felt like a mosquito was buzzing around. Yuri looked puzzled and asked, in this weather? I smiled. It looks like you misunderstood. Oh, I saw it correctly. Did we finally find one? In the end, Yuri purchased the L6. After finishing the SIM card and data transfer, we left the store. They said they didn't have the pink gold in stock, so I bought the sky blue. This color looks good too, right? Won't it be covered up by the case anyway? Yuri kept staring at her new phone to see if she liked it. I'll have to use it carefully for 2 more years as a slave to the contract. That model will be discontinued soon. Upon hearing this, Yuri looked surprised. Really? Why? I kept thinking I might forget and words slipped out unintentionally. I chuckled, trying to smooth it over. It was just a joke. After parting ways with Yuri, I hurried to Taikyu's house. As soon as I entered the house, I grabbed Taikyu, who was deeply engrossed in a game, and exclaimed, L6. What? It's from Samsung Electronics, the L6. Taikyu pulled something out of his pocket. Are you talking about this? Yuri bought a phone that was exactly like the one she wanted. It was even pink gold. Did you have to get pink? If you're a guy, it's pink. As I was about to talk about what just happened, Taikyu looked at my empty hands and asked, but you didn't bring lunch? Is lunch really important in this situation? I explained to Taikyu what happened at SSK Telecom. Surprised, Taikyu asked, you saw a hologram when touching the L6? And they mentioned L6 discontinuation? Yeah. Why? I don't know either. Discontinuation means that production and sales will be halted. Taikyu explained to me about the smartphone market. Samsung Electronics releases a variety of smartphones from high-end to low-end. Among them, the L series is their flagship smartphone. The current smartphone market is truly a battlefield for global electronics companies. The high-end smartphone market is dominated by Apple's iPhone and Samsung Electronics L series. Although Chinese companies like Oppo and Xiaomi have been advancing in recent years, they mainly rely on the domestic low to mid-range market and have not yet shown their strength in the high-end market. Well, even though they dominate in sales and profit margin of high-end phones, the iPhone is overwhelming. That's why Samsung Electronics specifically made this L6 to compete with iPhone. There are even talks that it surpasses the iPhone 6 in design and performance. Perhaps due to such evaluations, the L6 was selling like hotcakes, to the point where stock of certain colors was running low. The previous generation model, the L5, sold around 50 million units worldwide. This alone was an astonishing figure, but the expected sales for the L6 were set to exceed 70 million units. Taegu had a look of confusion. Why would it be discontinued when it's selling well globally? What could be the reason for it to be discontinued? Taegu seemed to have a thought at my question. Oh, could it be due to patent disputes? Patent disputes? Did you know a smartphone contains over 200,000 patents? From communication frequencies, semiconductors, components, functionalities, designs, and more. Samsung Electronics is an IT manufacturing company that is recognized worldwide, not just in Korea. Therefore, they were involved in numerous patent disputes in different countries. Especially, the patent dispute between Samsung and NPL in the early days of smartphones was famous as the lawsuit of the century. Hasn't the patent issue been somewhat resolved? Even if they lose in a patent dispute, it's very rare for it to lead to a sales halt. Usually, it's settled through compensation or paying royalties. Moreover, patent disputes are so complex that it takes years to reach a judgment. Even if it ends up halting sales by then, that model has usually disappeared from the market. Taegu nodded. Indeed. From a patent perspective, Samsung Electronics is the conqueror, not the conquered. Unlike Apple, which introduced the iPhone and other companies entering the market afterwards, Samsung Electronics had been making cell phones since the CDMA era. Hence, they possessed a vast number of communication and technological patents recognized globally. In fact, when caught in design patent disputes with Apple, they counterattacked using their communication patents and achieved some success. So what's the real reason? Why is it being discontinued? You can think of Samsung equals Samsung as sometimes I may miss it. The legal battles between Apple and Samsung over patent infringements have been quite extensive and significant in the tech industry. Here are some key points. Initial lawsuits. Apple initiated the first lawsuit in 2011, accusing Samsung of copying the design and functionality of the iPhone. Samsung responded with countersuits, leading to a series of legal battles across multiple countries. Major rulings. In 2012, a U.S. jury awarded Apple over $1 billion in damages, but this amount was later reduced and subject to various appeals. Samsung won some cases in other countries including South Korea and Japan. Supreme Court decision. In 2016, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of Samsung, stating that damages for design patent infringement could be based on a component of the product rather than the entire product. Settlement. After years of litigation, Apple and Samsung finally reached an out-of-court settlement in 2018. The terms of the settlement were not disclosed, but it marked the end of their long-running patent disputes. These cases have had a significant impact on patent law and the tech industry, influencing how companies approach design and innovation. We sat on the couch and looked down at the table. On the table lay the L6. We nailed it this time, said economist Keynes. In the long run, as Keynes said, all humans die. Applying this to the phone, it goes like this. In the long run, all phones will be discontinued. Therefore, even the latest phone, the L6, will eventually face the path of discontinuation. The important thing is, why and when will it be discontinued? I touched the L6 here and there. Unlike before, nothing came to mind. I checked it thoroughly but didn't see any major issues. Did you notice anything strange while using it? Far from strange, it's the best phone I've ever used. Have there been any discontinued smartphones from Samsung Electronics due to issues? Taegu shook his head. Not that I know of. Besides, even if there were issues with the phone, they would repair or compensate, not discontinue it. True. Unlike the past feature phones that were limited to calls and texts, smartphones consolidate various portable electronic devices like laptops, MP3 players, and cameras into one product. Smartphones have many features, and with complexity come various issues in software and hardware. If every issue led to discontinuation, all manufacturers would have had to close down. From the manufacturer's perspective, there's no reason they would willingly incur losses. Why would a popular smartphone be discontinued? On that night, I fell asleep on the couch when suddenly a scream echoed from the room. Ah! What's wrong? Startled, I got up and ran into the room. Bang! The door flung open as Taegu dashed out of the room. His glasses askew, he looked bewildered. What's going on? Something exploded near my head with a bang. I was perplexed. What nonsense are you talking about? Are you dreaming? No, I'm serious. Something actually exploded. Am I okay? Did my eyes or ears fly off? He didn't seem quite all there mentally. I went into the room and turned on the light. Surprisingly, Taikyu was telling the truth. The mattress pad was charred, smoldering slightly. Hey, get some water. Taikyu fetched a bottle of water from the fridge and I poured it on the bed. Sizzle. Since it wasn't a big fire, the embers were quickly extinguished with the water. What on earth was happening this late at night? I investigated the cause of the fire. There was no need to search hard. A melted phone lay in the middle of the charred pad. When I reached closer, I could feel the intense heat. Taikyu, barely holding it together, looked at the phone and said, "What?" The L6 exploded. I asked Taikyu, "What did you do to the phone?" "I didn't do anything. I just plugged in the charger." According to Taikyu, he was playing games on his phone until just before bed, then plugged in the charger right before falling asleep. And then this incident happened while he was sleeping. But why did it explode? I have no idea. I examined the charger. It was a genuine charger from Seosung Electronics, and there seemed to be no loose wires or any other issues. Why did this happen? Taikyu, with a shocked expression, said, "Wait, a phone explodes within a week of buying it? What kind of bomb is this?" "A bomb." We looked at each other in disbelief. Surely not. Taikyu sat in front of the computer and browsed the internet. There have been several explosion incidents before this. The first post was made 3 days after the release. It all started with a photo of an exploded L6 phone posted on an online community called Pompu. The victim claimed that the phone exploded for no apparent reason while charging. Seosung Electronics responded promptly, quickly resolving the issue with the victim. However, similar posts continued to appear on blogs and Facebook. Just by checking online, there were at least 3 cases. If we include yours, that would be 4, right? If we count the unreported ones, probably even more. The manufacturer would not want any quality controversies. Therefore, it wouldn't be surprising if they offered cash compensation or settlements to avoid negative publicity. At Seosung Electronics, what did they say the cause was? They said it was due to external impact. In fact, phone explosions are not that uncommon. Taikyu explained. Most electronic devices, including smartphones, use lithium-ion batteries due to their high energy density compared to volume, making them efficient. However, lithium-ion batteries have a tendency to explode when they suffer an impact. In reality, incidents where phones made by NPL or other manufacturers explode are not uncommon. The issue is the frequency of these incidents. The difference between one phone exploding in 1,000,000 and one in 10,000 is quite significant. Is it really all due to external impact? We searched through articles and posts on SNS about Seosung Electronics and the L6 all night. Although there have been several explosion incidents and minor issues like voice recognition or screen brightness, they didn't seem to have much impact on the sales of the L6. While CL Electronics released the Prime 5 around the same time, it was overshadowed by the L6 and couldn't shine. There was a high possibility of Seosung Electronics dominating until the release of the iPhone 7 by Apple. We examined explosion incidents from other companies, and indeed the explosion rate of the L6 was overwhelmingly higher compared to other phones. Could there have been an issue in the manufacturing process? Could Seosung Electronics make a mistake that even smaller companies wouldn't? Unlike me, who remained composed, Taikyu was anxious. This is an opportunity. We've got valuable information in our hands now. Let's wait and see. Why wait? We should act fast, even a little. Taikyu expressed frustration. What if Seosung Electronics announces discontinuation first? We'll lose everything then. Selling off Bitcoin was not an investment but a move to mitigate risks. Even if the Mountain Hill bankruptcy didn't materialize, there wouldn't be much of a loss. The WTI buy was a small part of assets, just $3 million. However, this time is different. If I were only investing $2 or $3 million like last time, I wouldn't have debated this much. Even if discontinuation is confirmed, it doesn't necessarily translate to immediate profits. Understanding the timing of the discontinuation and the implications it may have is crucial in determining the investment approach. I cautiously said, let's just observe the situation for a few more days. The next day, Taikyu called the AS Center to report the explosion of the L6. Immediately, an employee rushed to his house. Not all individuals wearing Samsung Electronics uniforms and repairing Samsung Electronics products are employees of Samsung Electronics. Most of the AS Center employees were outsourced workers. However, the person who visited his house was not an outsourced worker but an employee from the headquarters. I asked the employee, "What was the cause of the explosion?" The employee cautiously replied, "I will let you know after the investigation." The employee collected the exploded L6, handed a new product and brought up the topic of cash compensation. To receive full compensation, there was one important condition: not to post anything related to this incident on the internet until the investigation results were released. The employee requested this like a plea. Take-You acknowledged and sent the employee away. There have been quite a few similar incidents, haven't there? Even when faced with the melted L6, the employee did not panic and acted according to the prescribed manual. If it's just a device malfunction, it won't lead to discontinuation, but if it's an explosion, it's a different story. In household electronics, the most important thing is stability. When it comes to safety issues, cell phones are particularly sensitive. This is because they often carry important information such as photos or contacts, and are constantly carried around. In the case of Taikyu, it was lucky that the phone exploded while left aside, as if it had exploded during a game or a call, he would have suffered severe burns. If explosions continue to occur as they are now, it is sufficient reason to discontinue the product. Currently, the market capitalization of Samsung Electronics is 260 trillion won. The annual operating profit is around 30 to 35 trillion won, evenly generated across sectors like semiconductors, displays, CE and IM. Among this operating profit, the IM sector, which includes smartphones, accounts for 40%. If the L6 is discontinued, does that mean 40% of the operating profit will be lost? I nodded at Taikyu's words. Well, there are also mid-range models, so it might not be that severe. They also have models from previous generations. While Apple focuses on releasing 1 or 2 premium phones per year, Samsung Electronics releases a variety of models from premium phones costing over 1 million won to budget phones costing less than 300,000 won. While the L series is the main focus in the domestic market, in low-income emerging markets, budget phones are more popular. Considering all these factors, the discontinuation of the L6 would greatly impact Samsung Electronics. I asked Taikyu, how many countries were in the first launch? Korea, the US, Canada, and Europe, so probably around 10 countries. And the sales volume? Probably around 6 million units. Really sold a lot. If it is discontinued due to explosions, not only will they not be able to sell future units, but they will also have to refund all units sold so far. With each unit costing 1 million won, the refund amount alone would be 6 trillion won. Considering the profits that could have been made by continuing to sell here and the decrease in brand value, the losses would likely escalate significantly. If the information is accurate, it can be considered as seizing the opportunity. Even if it's certain that L6 will be discontinued, the real issue starts now. If a specific stock is expected to rise, buying that stock is the way to go. If you are more confident, you could even leverage credits or receivables. But what if a specific stock is anticipated to fall? In this case, the investment options are limited. Taikyu said as if it were obvious, "Isn't short selling available for times like these?" Yes, that's true. There are 2 methods of short selling. One involves borrowing stocks and selling them, while the other involves selling stocks that you do not own. The former is called covered short selling and the latter is naked short selling. Currently in Korea, naked short selling is prohibited, only covered short selling is allowed. In theory, even individual investors can engage in short selling. However, the access is limited, so practically only institutions and foreign investors can do it. But OTK Company is a foreign corporation. Moreover, OTK Company's account is linked with Golden Gate. Therefore, Taikyu's funds fall under foreign category, known as black-haired foreigners. Black-haired foreigners refers to investors who, despite being Koreans, establish a foreign entity and disguise themselves with foreign capital to invest in the Korean stock market. It's not illegal, but individual investors do not particularly like them because they are seen as forces that disrupt the market. Partly based on truth. Short selling itself is not that difficult. It's similar to traditional stock trading, but the main difference is that one sells first and then buys back instead of buying first and then selling. The issue lies in the profit margin. The profitability of short selling can never exceed 100%. Even if you short sell a 1,000,000 won stock and later buy it back for 10,000 won, the profit margin will only reach 99%. Thinking rationally, the likelihood of Samsung Electronics stock plummeting to that extent was not realistic. Even if the discontinuation of the L6 model materializes, the decline would likely stop at 20 to 30%. Would making 30 to 40 billion won from a 13 billion won investment be considered successful? Even just achieving this would be an enormous profit. But is this really all there is? Should one be satisfied with this level of profit from such a golden opportunity? Is there a way to reap even greater profits? As I pondered deeply, Taekyu chimed in. What about futures and options? It's not like I haven't considered that before. I'm not well versed in derivative products. You didn't study that in college? I only attended for a year. Courses on futures and options are typically taken in the third or fourth year. What about the investment club? Our investment fund was only 1,000,000 won. Can you imagine trying that with such a paltry sum? Accessing the futures and options market is simply unfeasible with such a small amount of money. However, our current fund stands at $12.5 million. It's not my own money, but a substantial investment capital is at our disposal. With this amount, it seems fitting to give it a proper try. John Maynard Keynes was a highly influential British economist whose ideas fundamentally changed the field of macroeconomics and the economic policies of governments. Short selling involves borrowing shares of a stock and selling them at the current market price, with the expectation that the stock's price will decrease. Later, you buy the shares back at the lower price, return them to the lender, and pocket the difference. I know some might be like, how is it possible? But it's true, and I've done a lot of short selling myself. Covered short selling. You borrow shares from someone who owns them, typically facilitated by a brokerage, and then sell these borrowed shares at the current market price. Your obligation is to return the same number of shares to the lender in the future. The term covered means that the short sale is secured because you have actually borrowed the shares before selling them. This contrasts with naked short selling, where shares are sold without being borrowed first, which is often prohibited because it can lead to market manipulation and instability. Futures contracts. Futures are agreements to buy or sell an asset, like stocks, at a predetermined price at a future date. Long position. Agreeing to buy the asset in the future. 2. Short position. Agreeing to sell the asset in the future. Futures can lead to large losses if the market moves against your position. Options are financial contracts that give the buyer the right, but not the obligation, to buy or sell an asset at a specific price before a certain date. Call option P gives the right to buy the asset at a set price. Put option P gives the right to sell the asset at a set price. Call option profit if the asset price rises above the strike price. Put option profit if the asset price falls below the strike price. The maximum loss is limited to the premium paid for the option. However, options can expire worthless if the asset price does not move as anticipated. I won't go into detail as there are various factors involved in this. Leverage. Using borrowed capital to increase the potential return on an investment. Leverage amplifies gains because you can control a larger position with a smaller amount of your own capital. Leverage also amplifies losses which can exceed the initial investment. Stop-loss orders. If you don't know this, then never get into stock trading. An order is placed with a broker to sell a stock when it reaches a certain price. To limit potential losses on an investment by automatically selling the stock if it falls to a specified price. These concepts are foundational in trading and investing, providing tools for managing risks, and capitalizing on market opportunities. You can read up to Chapter 30 plus. Fortunately, I immediately thought of someone I could ask for help. Is Hyunju still in Korea? If she works at Golden Gate, she must be well versed in derivatives. She returned to Hong Kong a few days ago. Oh. Hyunju came to Korea for the Baymart inspection. Since her business trip is over, it's natural for her to go back. Should I ask her through phone or email? I was about to nod but stopped. If you ask her if she believes in gift options, what will she say? Taekyu said confidently. You have to say you believe in the Oracle Eye's foresight. I hope she unpacks and calls back. As I was contemplating, I remembered a suitable person. I know someone I can ask. I dialed the number I knew, but it came back as an invalid number. I heard the number had changed since I took a leave of absence, and I haven't been in touch since, so I don't know the new contact information. There is a way to find out. I called a senior who was the vice president of the club when I was in it. Hello. Hello, Senior Hoyoung. I'm Kong Jin-ho from the Business Administration Department. Long time no see, Jin-ho. How have you been? Are you done with the military service? Yes. I called to ask you something. What is it? Do you happen to know Sanjiop's contact information? I don't know. But Woo Hyun might know. Try contacting Woo Hyun. Got it. When are you returning to school? I need to see your face. Yes. I will contact you later. After calling several club members multiple times, I finally managed to get in touch with Senior Sanjiop to get his contact information. I made another phone call. Ring ring. Click. Hello. Luckily the call went through. I quickly spoke. Is this Senior Sanjiop's phone? Yes, who is this? I'm Kong Jin-ho from the Business Administration Department. Senior Sanjiop responded warmly. Oh, Kong Jin-ho. Long time no see. How have you been all this time? I've been all right. But what's up? I'll tell you when we meet up. Are you free to meet? I'm currently in Suwon. Can you come over here? Shall I come now? Not right now, but after 10 p.m. should be fine. Got it. I'll come over at that time. After hanging up, Taekyu asked, who was that? It's Park Sanjiop, the former president of the investment club. What kind of person is he? I chuckled softly and replied, he's a total nerd. Adding a few more words, I said, and he's also a genius. There are two types of geniuses in the world. Those who excel in various fields and those who excel in just one area. Senior Sanjiop belonged to the latter category. The investment club, also known as the Fail Club. Senior Sanjiop was the club president when I joined. Since childhood, he had won several international math competitions as a math prodigy, which earned him admission to a prestigious math department in Korea. Growing up in Australia, he was fairly proficient in English, but his grades in subjects other than math and English were abysmal. He mentioned that without his math achievements, even getting into a local university based on his college entrance exam scores would have been difficult. His grades in subjects other than his major barely passed. But when it came to math, he was unrivaled. The story of how he secretly attended a fourth-year class as a freshman, got engrossed in a problem given by the professor and spent 3 days and nights solving it was famous around campus. By chance, he joined the investment club and became fascinated with the stock market. During mock trading, he developed a keen interest in stocks. It was then that Senior Sanjiop noticed a small company called MK Tech listed on the Kosdaq. For some reason, he predicted that the stock would skyrocket by over 10 times. However, he didn't have enough funds to invest. No matter how much one expects a stock to rise, it's futile without the money to invest. Senior Sanjiop, who deemed the opportunity too good to miss, immediately sublet his living space and received a refund of 5 million won as a security deposit, using that money to buy MK Tech stocks. Having no place to stay, he moved between friends' homes and dorm rooms, patiently waiting for the stocks to rise. Astonishingly, within just a month of purchasing, MK Tech soared as it aligned with the trending themes of the time, hitting the daily limit increase. The stock, which had been at rock bottom for years, rose tenfold in less than 2 months. As expected, when it increased tenfold, Sanjiop promptly sold the stocks without hesitation. In less than a month, the 5 million won had turned into 50 million won. This was just the beginning. Having succeeded in his first investment, Sanjiop focused on corporate analysis, leaving lectures, grades, and personal interests behind. Despite facing occasional losses, he promptly cut losses and switched to other stocks following his principles. Consistently making profits, by the time I joined the club, Sanjiop's investment fund had surpassed 300 million won. For an ordinary university student, this sum would be unimaginable. However, Sanjiop felt a sense of inadequacy. Most regrettable to him was his initial investment amount. If his initial investment had been 100 million won, he could have earned 6 billion won. Yet, with only a modest 5 million won as the initial investment, he could not earn more than 300 million won. Sanjiop set his sights on achieving higher returns. He stacked dozens of books, conducted simulated trading, and studied the options market. when he spotted an opportunity in CL Chemicals, a subsidiary of the CL Group known for its advanced technology in basic materials and batteries. He believed it was significantly undervalued and predicted it would double in the future. Thus, he liquidated all his holdings to invest in CL Chemical call options. Unfortunately, shortly after Sanjiap's option purchase, an unfortunate incident occurred where an employee fell victim to an email phishing scam, resulting in the erroneous transfer of $27 million to a false account, which was equivalent to 20% of CL Chemical's quarterly operating profit at the time. Due to a completely unexpected adversity, the stock price, which was 200,000 won, dropped to 170,000 won, and the value of the call option I purchased plummeted in an instant. In that situation, Senior Sanjiap chose adventure instead of liquidating his position. He further ventured into buying more options. Senior Sanjiap borrowed at the legal maximum interest rate from a loan shark, and with that money he bought call options again. However, even until the option expiration date, the stock price of CL Chemicals did not recover, and the investment of over 300 million won turned into zero. As the days passed and he didn't repay the loan shark's pressure began. Men in black suits frequently visited the club room. It was an illegal collection, but there was no way to respond. Eventually, Senior Sanjiap dropped out of school and disappeared. Around that time my family situation worsened. Due to enlistment, naturally our contact was lost and I haven't heard from him since. In the end, CL Chemicals started gaining attention in the battery sector and rose to over 500,000 won, but that's a story from much later. If he had bought physical stocks instead of options, the 300 million would have become 700 million. However, due to dabbling in options he couldn't salvage a penny. Having heard the whole story, Taekyu shook his head. Started with 5 million won, made 300 million and ended up a debtor in the end? Life can be quite eventful for that person, eh? That's true. I nodded and wondered how he was living now. I bowed to a man with the build of a bear. Long time no see, Senior. Seeing Senior Sanjiap again, he looked healthier than I expected. However, he seemed at least 10 years older than before. His tanned face had wrinkles, and although he always had little hair, now it was almost half gone. People would probably mistake him for a middle-aged man with a couple of kids, not a college student. It seems like you've had a hard time in the past 2 years. Senior Sanjiap greeted me warmly. Thank you for your hard work. Have you eaten yet? Sanjiap nodded. There are plenty of restaurants in this busy area. What would you like to eat? What would you like to have, Senior? Would you like to have pork belly? Sanjiap preferred beef over pork, especially sirloin. During his heyday in the stock market, he used to treat his club to sirloin dinners. Of course, all expenses were covered by the club president, Sanjiap. I said to Sanjiap, Senior, I'm in the mood for some sirloin. Let's go eat some sirloin after a long time. Sanjiap responded with an awkward smile. I'm sorry, but I have some circumstances these days. I pointed to Taekyu and said, he's going to make a lot of money. We sat around the grill. Taekyu looked at the menu and gasped. Wow. 40,000 won per person. Even someone with a lot of money is surprised at little things. I'll order. I grabbed the menu and ordered 3 portions of sirloin first. Sanjiap scratched his head and asked, is it really okay to profit from this? You know, the senior always used to buy. Senior Sanjiap turned his gaze towards Taekyu. Who is this? Come to think of it, I didn't introduce him. He's my friend. His name is Taekyu Oh. Senior Sanjiap looked surprised. Is he the friend who bought Bitcoin in middle school? Yes, that's right. We've talked about Taekyu once before at a drinking session. Senior Sanjiap clicked his tongue in regret. What a waste. If only he had found the encryption key, it would have been a jackpot. Taekyu found the USB containing the encryption key not long ago. So it's natural not to know the details of the story. Would you like to drink? Senior Sanjiap shook his head in response to my question. I have to go back to work. Just a cola will do. Since Taekyu shouldn't drink due to driving, I ordered 2 bottles of cola for myself. Sizzle. The meat on the grill emitted a savory smell as it cooked. Senior Sanjiap picked up a piece of lightly cooked sirloin. Wow. It's been so long since I've had beef. I felt the same way. Eating mostly flour-based dishes at home and having some good meat now makes me feel like I might gain weight. It's a moment when I realize once again that humans have evolved through hunting and consuming meat. After taking a leave of absence, how have you been? I worked whatever odd jobs I could find for a while. Did manual labor, did some chauffeuring. Now I teach aspiring students at a friend's private academy, eating and sleeping there. Teaching math. Senior Sanjiop chuckled. As you know, I'm not skilled in teaching other subjects. By sweating it out and earning money, I realized how precious even a 101 coin can be. You've changed a lot, Senior. During the good days of successful stock trading, earning hundreds in a day was routine. The more money earned, the greater the spending, using money as if it were water. Now I'm left with around 2,000. Gotta work hard for a few months to pay it off. Earning hundreds of millions, suddenly becoming indebted overnight. If it were anyone else, they might have despaired and given up, right? Since I first saw him, I felt he wasn't an ordinary person. The meat quickly disappeared from the grill. I ordered an extra portion for two. Indeed, meat tastes best when someone else treats you to it. After our stomachs were somewhat full, Senior Sanjiop asked, "But why did you ask to meet me?" "I wanted to meet you once. And to ask you something." "What is it?" "I want to know more about future options. To open a futures trading account, you need to complete some training and have a margin deposit. Those won't be a problem. OTK Company has a corporate account already set up. It's already configured for all types of trading. The investor who sees the future. Up to Chapter 50 plus. Table. Up to Chapter 50 plus. Perfect hero. Up to Chapter 51 plus. Hollywood actor. Up to Chapter 46 plus. Devil's idol. Up to Chapter 12 plus. Alright, since you've understood it, I'll explain. Both options and futures are derivative products. Do you know the difference between the two? Somewhat. Sang Yeep, the senior, explained while drinking his cola. Futures involve an agreement to trade a specific product at a specific price at a specific point in the future. The reason for setting a price and date in the present to trade a product in the future is that product prices are not stable. If the price drops in the future, the seller incurs a loss while the buyer gains. Conversely, if the price rises, the seller gains and the buyer incurs a loss. Both the seller and buyer agree on specific prices and points in time in the present to avoid significant losses and gain a reasonable profit. Therefore, futures trading is more active for products with volatile price changes, such as stocks or oil. Options work similarly in concept. While futures involve trading in the future from the present, options only sell the right to trade. Options have an expiration date. Call options give the right to buy a product at a predetermined price on the expiration date, while put options give the right to sell it. Futures trading occurs regardless of future price changes, whereas options trading can depend on price changes at the expiration date. The decision to exercise the right is entirely up to the buyer. If it's profitable at maturity, the buyer exercises the right. Otherwise, they may not. So, options with higher chances of realization have higher upfront costs premium, whereas those with lower chances have lower costs. When securities firms or fund companies issue options, financial experts calculate probabilities and returns using various formulas. One interesting aspect of options is that the buyer's profit potential is unlimited, but their loss is limited to the purchase price. On the other hand, the issuer's profit is capped at the sale price, but their potential losses are unlimited. For example, let's say there's a put option that allows selling a stock at 1 million KRW when it's priced at 2 million KRW. The likelihood of the stock dropping significantly or the put option being exercised is minimal, so the issuance price of the option is very low. However, on the expiration date, the stock price reached 2.5 million won. One can sell at 2.5 million won in the market, so there will hardly be anyone crazy enough to exercise the put option and sell at 1 million won. Therefore, the option buyer gives up exercising their right. In this case, the buyer's loss is limited to the option purchase price already paid, while the issuer gains the same amount. Now let's consider the opposite scenario. If an unthinkable situation arises and the stock price drops to 100,000 won on the expiration date, one can sell for 100,000 won per share in the market, but the option buyer can exercise the right to sell at 1 million won. This would result in a profit of 900,000 won per share. Naturally, the option buyer would exercise their right and the issuer must honor that exercise. One might think it's just about paying the 900,000 won per share, but what if the issuance price of this option was 100 won? From the issuer's perspective, it means paying 9,000 times the issued price of 100 won. If a buyer bought 100 million won worth of this option, the amount they would have to pay would be 900 billion won. Of course, such events are rare. But, with a bitter smile, Senior Sangiop said, good things don't happen but bad things always do. Such as the 9/11 attacks or the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers. Once such an event occurs, the put option prices skyrocket exponentially, and the option issuer must pay that amount. During the financial crisis, global investment banks faced astronomical losses due to the derivatives they had issued, leading to bankruptcies or requests for government support. What happens if the issuer goes bankrupt? We had insurance prepared for a landslide, but if a landslide happens and the insurance company goes under first, then what's next? If the payer goes bankrupt, there's no way to collect. Various regulations and margin systems exist to prevent such situations, but in the worst-case scenario, there's no solution. However, such incidents might happen only once every few years, and most of the time, it ends with institutional investors and securities firms sweeping away the money that individual investors have put in. After a brief overview, the conversation continued with details that only those who have traded options would understand. I listened attentively, making mental notes of the important points. Meeting someone in person to explain made me feel like things I only knew theoretically were now falling into place. After finishing the conversation, Senior Sangiop looked at me and asked, I'd like to advise you not to dabble in options too much, but what exactly are you planning to do? I hesitated to evade the question but decided to be honest. Being in a position of needing help, I didn't feel right lying. It's about Samsung Electronics. Are you going for calls or puts? Puts. Senior Sangiop's expression turned surprised. Why? It's been performing well since the release of the L6. That L6 model is going to be discontinued. What? I explained about the exploding phone bought by Take-Two and the cases of explosions surfacing on the internet. Seemingly incomprehensible, Sangiop asked, is that the only reason? Do you have any other basis? Of course I did. I just couldn't explain it at that moment. Just because of those explosion incidents. Don't you have any other solid information? There was, but I couldn't elaborate right there. I just thought if more explosion incidents continue to happen, it might lead to discontinuation. It's not precise information. Sangiop advised me with a worried look. Be careful. If you make a wrong move with options, you could end up like me, losing a lot in one go. All right. We left the restaurant after saying goodbye. Senior Sangiop left first and then we got into the car. I asked Take-Two, did you hear? They say we can do it all at once. Do you still want to? Take-Two nodded his head and looked at me. Of course. What about you? I chuckled. Let's give it a try. Investment and speculation are fundamentally different. If it carries a risk that one can bear, it's considered an investment. If it carries a risk that one cannot bear, it's considered speculation. However, this distinction can be as thin as a single sheet of paper. The same action can be considered an investment for someone and speculation for another. Taking unbearable debt to buy a wasteland is speculation. But what if you know the city's development plan? What if you know a new city will be built in that wasteland? We are in a similar situation. No one knows if Samsung Electronics stock price will go up or down tomorrow. However, we know that the L6 model will be discontinued. It's not about luck. If you are certain, it's investing, not speculating. Take-Two summarized it simply. If I do it, it's investing. If others do it, it's speculation, right? I nodded. That's the right answer. While many oppose real estate speculation, they don't consider buying a house for themselves as speculation but rather as an investment. I pondered on investment strategies. The easiest way is short selling. The expected profit rate is around 20%. Even if things go wrong, losses should be limited to a few tens of percent. However, the profit is also capped at that level. On the other hand, buying put options could result in profits ranging from several times to tens of times if the predictions are correct. However, in the worst-case scenario, all investment capital could be wiped out. Low risk, low return, or high risk, high return? The lower the risk, the lower the return, and the higher the risk, the higher the return. After much thought, I concluded. Let's buy around 70% of put options and the rest through short selling. Even if the profit margin is slightly reduced, avoiding the worst-case scenario is crucial. The stock price of Samsung Electronics, which was hovering around 1.4 million won, surged steeply to around 1.6 million won after the release of the L6. The L6 received acclaim for surpassing the iPhone in both design and performance and recorded sales of over 40% compared to its predecessor in the global market. It was predicted to achieve the best performance in the next quarter, leading securities firms to raise their target prices in a frenzy. In reality, stock prices often move differently from expectations. This is because they reflect not the current value but the future value. In other words, the current stock price of Samsung Electronics was determined by factoring in the future profits from the L6. But what if the L6 is discontinued? Both current and future profits would vanish. Considering that the stock price has risen by over 10% since the L6 release, it is likely to drop by at least this much. Thinking about the potential loss due to refunds, wouldn't the current stock price fall by over 20%? As Taekyu browsed the internet, he said, "Looks like it's crashing again." Look. The latest explosion happened not in Korea but in the United States. Moreover, the fact that it wasn't during charging made the issue even more serious. Samsung Electronics stated they would collect and investigate the matter. They insisted that all previous explosions were due to external impacts, and they believed this one was no different. As explosions continued in Korea and abroad, foreign media started to pay attention. Time was running out. Just a few years ago, Korea was the world's top player in derivative trading volume. While that may not be the case now, it still dominates in terms of trading volume relative to market size. The daily average trading volume for options alone was over 500 billion won, and futures trading volume surpassed 1 trillion won. It was becoming hard to tell whether this was a stock market or a gambling den. The battle in the futures and options market was fierce, with gamblers trying to turn their lives around in one go and issuers blindly scraping money off them. I sat in front of the computer in place of Taekyu, logging into the home trading program. There were various rights exercises for put options. The higher the exercise price, the higher the issue price, and the lower the exercise price, the lower the issue price. Out of the 138 billion in the account, 8 billion was my own money. Although Taekyu had said he would cover all the investment money himself, if we were going to invest together, I had to show the same commitment. So I decided to pour in my share of 8 billion. Click. I typed on the keyboard and bought Samsung Electronics put options. No matter the exercise price, if the stock price didn't drop as expected, these options would all turn into scraps. I wasn't sure if this was a wise move. I pushed aside my doubts and continued typing on the keyboard. But as I placed the buy orders, an unexpected problem arose. There isn't much quantity. Derivative products are usually issued based on indexes like KOSPI 200 or HEI, and options issued based on individual stocks were limited. Although there are various options issued based on companies like Samsung Electronics, there weren't many options that suited our requirements. I bit my tongue. I didn't consider this aspect. It was something Senior Sang Yip hadn't mentioned. Thinking about it now, it was obvious. Senior Sang Yip probably thought our funds would range from a few million to about 100 million at most. He couldn't have imagined we'd have 13.8 billion. Currently, Samsung Electronics holds a 19% share of the exchange. For a single company to account for nearly 20% of the exchange market cap is astonishing. Even considering Korea's growth centered around large corporations, a market cap exceeding 250 trillion is an alarming level. Theoretically, if Samsung Electronics drops by 10%, the KOSPI would decline by 2%. If it drops by 20%, would it fall by 4%? Given its significance, the discontinuation of L6 would not only impact Samsung Electronics but also the entire market. I also bought KOSPI 200 put options. Luckily, options based on KOSPI 200 were abundant in the market. Ring ring. With a notification sound, contracts continued to be executed. As the cash balance decreased, the option balance increased. I poured 130 billion into put options and short selling out of the 138 billion. Only a mere 8 billion remained in the account. Why aren't you buying more? Use the remaining 8 billion for your living expenses. Even in the worst-case scenario, 8 billion should suffice for living expenses for a while. It's already too late to turn back now. All that's left is to wait for the results. The situation unfolded differently from what we expected. In just 2 days, Samsung Electronics stock price not only didn't drop but actually increased by 8%. The reasons were complex. The global stock market sentiment was positive, the exchange rate was favorable, and the prices of DRAM rose. The short-selling profit rate was inversely proportional to the stock price rise at 8%. The issue was with the put options. With Samsung Electronics and the Kospi index rising, the possibility of put option exercise decreased even further. Therefore, the value of the options plummeted drastically. Billions had already evaporated. Looking at the accounts all marked in blue, cold sweat covered my entire body. Taekyu didn't say anything, but his eyes showed his confusion. Despite the rising stock price, the L6 consistently exploded, with more than 10 incidents confirmed so far. Samsung Electronics announced they would release a statement regarding tomorrow's ignition incident. According to rumors, they seem to be leaning toward the direction of battery replacement. Online, complaints erupted. To replace the battery, do we have to tear apart the back cover? Doesn't the waterproof function decrease then? Will they take responsibility if it gets damaged by water? Does it make sense to disassemble a phone that costs over $1,000,000 right after buying it? Paying full price for a phone just released, what a total ripoff. Are consumers supposed to be beta testers? I'll just get a refund for the L6 and never use Samsung Electronics products again. Taekyu asked me. They will probably discontinue it in tomorrow's announcement, right? I nodded. Yeah, probably. If what my foresight showed was correct, then that would happen. The press conference was held at the Gangnam headquarters of Samsung Electronics regarding the L6 incident. Samsung Electronics is a global IT manufacturing company that ranks among the top in the world. As a result, not only domestic media but also foreign journalists filled the press conference room. IM Division President Jo Dong-jun took the stage at the press conference. He stood in front of the microphone with a solemn expression and began speaking. We deeply appreciate the unwavering support of our customers who cherish and love Samsung Electronics products. We have received reports of battery malfunctions in some of the L6 products we released. We sincerely apologize for the inconvenience and concern this has caused. The reporters quickly transcribed Jo Dong-jun's words into articles and sent them out. Jo Dong-jun continued his address, facing dozens of cameras and over 100 reporters. After conducting internal investigations, it has been confirmed that there were issues with the battery cells themselves. While only a small portion of the products with problematic batteries are estimated to be in the tens of thousands, prioritizing consumer safety, we have decided to temporarily halt sales and exchange all L6 units sold so far with new products. It is expected to take a week to prepare the replacements. We plan to expedite the exchange process as much as possible and will inspect and take necessary actions for customers who visit service centers before the new products are ready. The unexpected announcement surprised the journalists who were writing their articles. They eagerly raised their hands and began asking questions. Are you planning to recall the products rather than just replacing the batteries? That's correct. What was the issue with the battery cells? Due to minor deviations in the manufacturing process of the battery cells supplied by Samsung SB, there was a compression error on the upper right side, causing damage to the separator and leading to contact between the cathode and anode, resulting in the malfunctions. What are the differences between the new and old products? As questions poured in, Jo Dong-jun calmly provided answers. Due to supply issues, the initial batch in the first launch countries had Samsung SB batteries, while the subsequent launches were intended to feature BTL batteries. We will postpone the launch in the later countries and recall all current production units for replacement. We expect the recalls to proceed sequentially starting in a week. Since the recall is due to the manufacturer's responsibility, how do you plan to address consumer inconvenience? We are currently discussing this matter with mobile carriers to ensure that sufficient compensation is provided. About how much do you expect the loss cost due to the recall to be? President Jo Dong-jun said with a pained expression. It is a considerable amount to the point of being distressing. However, prioritizing consumer safety, we have made this decision. Watching the news, Taekyu dropped the chicken he was eating. It's not a discontinuation but a recall? What will happen now? I too was equally shocked. I was at a loss for words in my confusion. This is totally insane. Do they replace the whole product with a new one, not just the battery? Will they just replace it without questioning? Even if the screen is shattered, they will replace it if you bring in only the main unit. I might as well keep using it until then. Samsung Electronics is really generous. Their after-sales policy is in a league of its own. iPhones don't even explode. What's all this talk about? The online posts generally welcomed Samsung Electronics' recall decision. According to a survey conducted by a public opinion research agency, 95% of L6 users expressed their trust in Samsung Electronics and stated they would continue to use L6. Approximately 6 million units have been sold to date. If all these products were exchanged for new ones, the nominal loss would be around 6 trillion won, based on sales revenue, but the manufacturing cost is estimated to be around 300,000 won. Therefore, the actual loss would likely be around 2 trillion won. It was forecasted that if the returned phones were sold as refurbished phones in emerging markets, the loss amount might not be significant. Although there were losses in the range of billions, market evaluation indicated that since this is only a one-time loss, it is not something to be overly concerned about. Instead, a report has come out saying that due to this recent incident, Samsung Electronics may actually gain consumers' trust, which could benefit the company in the long run. The stock price, which had been falling due to the recall announcement, rebounded at the last minute and only ended up dropping by 1.5%. The next day, Samsung Electronics announced a shareholder return policy, including quarterly dividends. The market cheered this announcement more than expected, leading to a 3.4% increase in the stock price. His accounts were filled with red figures. The losses from short selling exceeded 10%. That was a loss he could bear. But the situation with put options was different. The losses from put options exceeded 30%, even reaching 80% in some cases. Combined with the losses from short selling, the total loss was nearly half of the initial investment. Taekyu stared at his account balance with a half-dazed expression. Just a few days ago he couldn't have imagined ending up in such a situation when buying put options. I widened my eyes as I checked the balance. Out of the 13 billion won invested, 6 billion had vanished. Some of my money was gone and Taekyu had lost tens of billions. We had agreed to share profits, but Taekyu would have to bear most of the losses. I couldn't cover tens of billions. What should we do now? With eyes closed, lying down but unable to sleep. All that filled my mind was one thought. Why a recall, not abdication? Did I misinterpret something? Could I have missed something? What should I do now? The number 6 billion flickered before my eyes. 6 billion. I can't grasp what amount that is. It's enough money to live without working for a lifetime. Even if I spend 1 billion every year from now on, will I be able to spend it all? But that money was gone in just a few days. Money untouched, only recorded as a negative balance in the account. Warren Buffett, known as the genius of investments, said that there are only two principles to follow when investing. First, don't lose your capital. Second, make sure to follow the first principle. He faithfully kept those two principles, but other investors did not. That's why he achieved great success while others failed. It's nonsense. Who wants to lose their capital willingly? They invest thinking they will make money and end up losing it. Regardless of possible or impossible, there is logic in those words. If you incur a 50% loss of your capital, you need to make a 100% profit to recover it. Therefore, once you lose your capital, recovery is almost impossible. But we've lost 6 billion from the start. The bigger issue is that this may not be the end. The value of options decreases over time. Options that can be exercised tend to converge toward the expected profit and option price. But options that cannot be exercised converge to zero no matter the purchase price. If the options expire like this, additional losses of tens of billions will occur. What should I do about this? Should I withdraw now to avoid further losses? If it ends like this, recovering the principal would be practically impossible. I felt like fear was tightening around my neck. If you are having difficulty understanding any financial concept, then you can ask them in the comments section. Now you can read. On Patreon, The Investor Who Sees the Future. Up to chapter 50 plus. Table. Up to chapter 51 plus. Perfect Hero. Up to chapter 52 plus. Hollywood Actor. Up to chapter 50 plus. Devil's Idol. Up to chapter 15 plus. Sword to Stardom. Up to chapter 15 plus.